What is up, new Godzilla poster? Did you do this? Do I like it? I could take it or leave it. No, of course I fucking love it. Awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, new season, new posters, am I right? Hey, wait a minute. What is this? No, what is this? You don't buy me gifts. Oh, yeah, you heard about that, the auditions. Well, cut me some slack here. I mean, if I dunk you in a pool of acid, I'm gonna need a new assistant. That's just the biz. Okay, well, tell you what. You know what? You know what? I like this. I like this. So, how about today you make an effort to impress me, and maybe I'll keep you around. Yes, yeah, we're doing a video today. Yeah. What video? I told you in the last countdown. We talked about what the next one. You didn't watch it. So you didn't watch it. So you didn't do your homework. And you wonder why I'm looking for a new assistant. God damn it. Kaiju fans, it is I, the Kaijuologist, and I'm here to save you from a boring evening where nobody talks about kaiju at all. Let's save you from that terrible fate. We're going to talk about kaiju. In the last film, you saw me tackle the dubious exercise of ranking the Mechagodzilla films, but I'm sure you noticed I was kind of distressed to have number 5 and number 4, the bottom ranking in that countdown. So I wanted to, and I promised you, the next video we would dive into a compare and contrast. Tonight we will be tackling Terror of Mechagodzilla 1975 and the conclusion to the Showa series. In this other corner we have Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, 1993. And neither the beginning or the conclusion of anything. It is, in fact, right kind of smack dab in the middle of our Heisei period. Now, the more I thought about these two films, the more I noticed some interesting similarities. They also kind of have unfair reputations, both of them, I think. I misspoke in when I was talking about the countdown of Mechagodzilla. I've always kind of thought 1993 Mechagodzilla 2 was not a fan favorite. That it was kind of an underdog film. And actually doing more homework before this compare and contrast, there are actually a lot of people who speak highly of it and even have no problem putting it as the number one Heisei film for that period. I disagree with that analysis. I don't think it's the best Heisei film. That is probably far easier to hand off to Biollante. That said, there are some people who really champion the 1993 film. Terror of Mechagodzilla, I noticed there's kind of a reverence for it, but very few people actually seem to like it. And it just kind of has a lot of unflattering titles associated with it. I mean, it is, adjusted for inflation, it is the least profitable Godzilla film in the entire series. As I understand it, Showa Heisei Millennium, this is the bottom barrel Godzilla film, which is sad. It also, because of it being such a financial bomb, was the last of the Showa period, and it's the only time this series has ended, and Toho wasn't kind of planning for it to end, so it's kind of abrupt, it's awkward, and I can see where it kind of riles a lot of fans. Its other problem is Terror of Mechagodzilla is just kind of easily overshadowed by its much more upbeat, lively, campy, and flashy prequel in the original Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. So this film I think really deserves a little more time in the sun. It's actually a pretty damn good film, and just because of its weird historical place in the context of the series, I think a lot of people just have a harder time with it. So tonight, to try and kind of help myself keep on pace with why I thought to compare and contrast these two films, I have a few categories that we're going to go down and we'll apply each one. And then, I don't know, maybe we'll see if there's a winner film at the end. Maybe I'm going to pull an Iowa and I'm just going to flip a coin on you bitches. So, my first category, and I think the one that'll just be the easiest to get out of the way, is both of these films have a litany of what the fuck moments that you would think in like the draft period or even like post production they would think to like maybe edit a little something in to help these moments. Anyway, the first one I'm going to hit off is when our exploratory team lands on the mysterious dinosaur island in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. I forget, it's like Ando Island or something. It's probably some cheeky reference to an island from the Showa period. Anyway, we get there, we find our egg. Rodan shows up. Rodan, who in the English dub they very much decided he is Radon now. We're apparently going to backtrack 40 years and try to correct that little cultural mishap there. Nice job dubbing. So what I love most about this sequence is while Rodan is attacking the group, the one of the scientists just throws out, it clearly has been like irradiated and mutated. So now Rodan's a mutant, not just a dinosaur. It's a mutant, I guess. We never follow up. Don't worry about it. The fun bit of detail that this dude throws out is this entire island is like a nuclear dump. Like, people just throw nuclear trash here. It's no wonder the dinosaur's huge. And nobody is wearing any protective gear on this island. What the fuck? You guys just showed up to an island full of nuclear waste and just started wandering around? Nice job, script. For our next what the fuck, I'm going to hit up Terror of Mechagodzilla with pretty much all of Dr. Mifune's backstory. So this entire plot revolves around this scientist who was ostracized from society and treated terribly, and his wife committed suicide, I guess, because the family shame or something. Don't worry about it, the plot isn't. And all this misery because he dared to put forward the idea that there is a dinosaur living in the water. In a movie universe, I mean, mind you, the Showa timeline can be a little fuzzy at moments. This is one of the few direct sequels. In the last film, you had an alien race with a robot dinosaur fight another mutant dinosaur alongside a revived, like, Asian lion god. But a dinosaur in the water is heresy! Kick the man out! What the fuck, film? Back to Mechagodzilla 2, I'm going to hit up the singing plant. The little plant sample that's probably been dead for a good long while, but apparently puts out some sort of telekinetic energy that immediately translates itself very conveniently into a song. There's a computer that translates plant song music, and then there's a bunch of psychic little girls who just happen to sing pitch perfect, this crazy like aria thing. Like what the fuck? I'm not done with Mechagodzilla 2. How about flying robot pterodon thing? What the fuck? Back to Terror of Mechagodzilla. Why did we lose our Planet of the Apes motif? No explanation there. And the only reason we knew we lost our ape aliens is because the dude, after getting like shot or whatever, decides he has to take off his skin to reveal that he's gross underneath. It's a stupid looking makeup effect. It didn't need to happen, and if they hadn't forced it in, then for all we knew the continuity was just fine. What the fuck? Okay, I'm gonna hit up Mechagodzilla 2. What's up with Rodan just dissolving into like sparkly dust? Like, is that how this works all of a sudden? There's no setup for it. There's no... I mean, we realize that Rodan and Godzilla both want to defeat Mechagodzilla now, but like... And they both want to help the baby, but God, give us a little something. Like, Rodan just flops on top of him, dissolves into a bunch of dust, transfers all his nuclear energy to Godzilla, and it's just... oh god, just a little more homework, just a little exposition on how this works would have been nice. Like Mickey's right there. Play the psychic card. Like give us some more than just, oh my god, they transferred energies. Like how could you tell when the dead dinosaur rose from the dead? What the fuck? Okay, the last one, and I guess maybe this. I think this helps our tiebreaker. I think now Mechagodzilla 2 just won. But the whole reason with Mickey in the cockpit, like, we'll talk about this more later. It's not really that's a terrible idea. In fact, honestly, it's a better idea than a lot of the ideas going on in this script. But come on, if anyone deserved a training montage, it was Mickey Sagusa. Well, she's just in the cockpit. And she has this technology that works with her ESP so she can locate the Godzilla brain. And it's just, it's not that it's a terrible idea. It could work fine, but give us something, people. Like, it all happened so fast. It really leaves you sitting there scratching your head going, what the fuck? Okay, so our next category, and this one's a little more fun, in my opinion. Category 2 is dinosaurs. Yes, the revenge of the dinosaurs. In both of these films, we have Godzilla, we have Mechagodzilla, and then we have a third entity that is a dinosaur, very deliberately a dinosaur. We have Titanosaurus for Terror of Mechagodzilla, and Godzilla v Mechagodzilla 2, we are off to reclaim one of Toho's oldest and most cherished of properties, Rodan! Or Radon. Okay, I guess brief tangent here. So the English dub for Godzilla Mechagodzilla 2 is actually relatively faithful to the original script. When I first saw this movie, I got a bootleg when I was like 10. It was a VHS and it was the Japanese subtitle. So this time was actually my first time hearing the English dub for Mechagodzilla 2. Like I said, the lines and the actual editing, they kept pretty spot on, actually. The voice acting is pretty terrible. It's like a bunch of like C-level anime actors just got the script for the first time and are just doing their damnedest to get that paycheck. I really would avoid it. Terror of Mechagodzilla as well. Some of the most insane butchering of a Godzilla film. Well, and fun fact, there are actually two English dubs going on, edits. And one of them has a bunch of crazy stock footage from Invasion of Astro Monster and Ibra Horror of the Deep, and it creates just this bullshit Godzilla movie, like, or I guess, like a history to the monster that has nothing to do with the film series. It's all terrible. And goes forever. It's like 15 minutes of just stock footage. But then, that was Henry G. Saperstein, right? He's like the pimp for Godzilla in America. And that's the version you can find on Hulu currently. Saperstein also sold the rights to like a television station company, broadcasting company, that then edited even further to get rid of some of the violence and get rid of like some of the weird surgery scenes with Katsura. That's the version you saw if you, like me, saw it on TNT's Monster Vision. So there's a couple terrible dubs going around out there, and both of them do a hack-ass job with this. Terra Mechagodzilla is not the smoothest script to begin with, but the Japanese version is so much more helpful. So, as always with the case, both these films, probably the Japanese version if you can manage it, but at least Mechagodzilla 2 stays pretty true to that story. Anywhoozle, tangent aside, dinosaurs! So let's talk about this Rodan, how about? I don't hate this Rodan. The design isn't, it isn't bad. It lacks some of the charm and personality of specifically the very first Rodan suit in the 50s, is just an especially stunning kaiju suit that it's sad to even compare to anything. They never really did as good of a job with this monster. That said, this Rodan in '93, it is not a suit. It is not a man in a suit. It is a puppet, and at times a pretty sophisticated one. There are some shots. Rodan does not suffer in the Heisei period the way Mothra did. That's not to say Rodan didn't suffer. There are some awkward shots. The weird sparkler war thing that Koichi Kawakita, our special effects director, it's it's real glaring here where like Rodan crashes into things and there's just sparks for no good reason. Rodan flies over a bridge and there's sparklers. It's not the sonic boom thing. It's nice that they remembered it and they kept it to the monster, but it just looks really stupid here most of the time. It's not good. Now, some of the shots where like you see him swooping off of buildings and or I mean the island for the most part, the melee battle is pretty damn good. Rodan also we have like a shoulder puppet structure thing that lets it you see its eyes, its mouth give a little more expression. It's pretty good. It's a nice detail. One of the things these two, Titanosaurus and Rodan, share in common is in their films they're both very much melee fighters, which in the Heisei period is especially a breath of fresh air with the beam wars everywhere. That opening fight with Godzilla and Rodan on the island is pretty brutal, fun melee. Actually, it's well choreographed, looks pretty good, and it's just fun that very rarely are we just shooting lasers at each other. Rodan's character arc is more interesting, honestly, than a lot of arcs in the Heisei period. I'll grant that. It's interesting to see him going from kind of so violent and protective against Godzilla, and then slowly having to become an ally at kind of the last moment. The thing I do like about this Rodan, though, is this Rodan is such a scrapper. Like, every kaiju he walks up to, he really does just go for it. I like the fight with him and Mechagodzilla, too. It's brief, and it's pretty sad. Rodan just gets the shit blasted out of him. The poor Rodan's, like, bleeding. There's foam coming out of his mouth. Yeah, Mechagodzilla done him, man. But I like that the second he sees Mechagodzilla, he goes for it. Like, he knocks out the eye for a while. I think he even knocks Mechagodzilla over. It's kind of fun. I appreciate the go-getter attitude this Rodan has. But it never is quite as maybe charming as the Showa period. We just never quite bond with the monster in the same way. I do appreciate, though, they kept his involvement of the plot is always crucial and never terribly forced, I guess. I kind of like the way he weaves in and out of the plot and the roles he plays. So, how about then Titanosaurus? Titanosaurus is similar in that it's kind of a tragic figure. We were told at the beginning Titanosaurus is not naturally a violent monster, but because of Dr. Mifune's control and involvement with our aliens, Titanosaurus is made to be a beast of violence, even though he's not. He's a gentle dinosaur. I root for Titanosaurus. I like the monster's design. I kind of like too the simplicity of the backstory, that it's just a dinosaur, which thank God the original script for this Titanosaurus was supposed to be two separate beings called the Titans who transformed into one giant Titanosaurus, and ooh, I don't know, it reeks of like Jet Jaguar failure all over again. I'm glad that Titanosaurus and kind of some of the tragedy of his story that he's not necessarily a bad guy, he's made to be a bad guy. I was bringing up the melee action that both him and Rodan get in on. Titanosaurus is fun. He's got that crazy like uppercut thing that sends Godzilla flying, and he bites Godzilla on the face. Interesting, both of these dinosaur-centric kaiju. One is a land, or not a land. Let's say Rodan is the animal of the sky. Titanosaurus is the dinosaur of the water, and yet they both use wind-based attacks. What? Yes. Titanosaurus has his like mermaid tail that he waves about, and actually, it's pretty fun special effect shot. They do a nice job with the wind effects here. both with Godzilla running at Titanosaurus, the wind, but also Titanosaurus like knocking some of the buildings in the city down with his wind attack. Um, Such a weird similarity for those two kaiju to have. I'd say Titanosaurus fares a little better just in his presentation. It's a good looking suit. It's for the Showa period, it's pretty convincing. And the special effects regarding Titanosaurus, I think, are just a lot more sound than what we got left with poor Rodan. You know, they struggled really getting an organic feel to Rodan flying, whereas they didn't have some of those obstacles with Titanosaurus. Titanosaurus, the fights and the miniatures with him all look good. You know, really both of these films have some special effect blemishes, but they're pretty sound. Terror of Mechagodzilla for the '70s is really a treat, special effects wise. I mean, the destruction sequence with Titanosaurus and Mechagodzilla in Tokyo is a fantastic urban destruction sequence. It's one of my favorites in the whole series. Specifically, seeing, you know, all the artillery and lasers of Mechagodzilla, what that can do to a city. I mean, I could bore you going into details about certain shots I love, but it all looks so good, and you get such an overwhelming sense of the power of the robot. But I like the way Titanosaurus blends in too, and especially his first melee brawl with Godzilla in the city, or they're like in a harbor. It looks really good in the cinematography, the way the camera is swooping around them. Pay attention, it looks good. Okay, so our third category we're gonna hit up for a bit is the actual like philosophy that both these films are tackling, you know, or the social commentary, the politics, whatever, however you want to categorize it. They both have a very similar nature versus science theme going on here. How about we do Terror of Mechagodzilla first this time? There is very early on a theory from Dr. Mifune. He brags about how superior Titanosaurus is, right? Because it's not a robot. It's not that crappy mechanical thing that you trot out. My dinosaur is breathing and alive, and it thinks, and it's got a heart or something. Interesting argument, Dr. Mifune. Except the trick of it is that he makes it to the aliens, who then agree, and their solution then is to, you know, make Katsura, Dr. Mifune's daughter, even more of a cyborg. And that we'll talk about Katsura some more, but it's one of the really like fun little poetic twists of this script, that the very thing Dr. Mifune is trying to impress upon the aliens actually take his lesson to heart, and then they apply it on his daughter in a pretty kind of sick, cruel fashion that he then, of course, has to wallow in the tragedy of it's like he was right all along. Mechagodzilla was lacking a real like heart and mind, and now they gave it to him. Whoops. And I mean, Katsura ends up being the one, I guess, who has to kind of battle it the most. You know, she argues for Titanosaurus not just being a weapon of destruction like Mechagodzilla, but oh, that revenge, that vengeance Dr. Mifune craves. So then how the science and technology aspect is, it's not as subtle with Mechagodzilla 2, but compared to how clumsy so many of the Heisei period films are with their whatever philosophical debate they want to have, this one at least verges on something that is actually applicable to the plot of the film, but is, I don't know, relevant or remotely interesting or handled with any sort of. I can't say it's handled well. They tried. They tried here. I think the real question boils down to constantly like, is it even fair for Godzilla to, or for humanity to try and kill Godzilla? Right? He's kind of this lumbering, constant reminder of, you know, we already fucked up messing with nature. We don't need to be messing with nature anymore. We don't need to be pushing the science of destruction anymore. The bomb is what created him, and what is Mechagodzilla if not, the bomb again in just a very different, more elaborate form. Now, mind you, and just like Katsura becomes the main crux of this discussion in the earlier film, Miki becomes kind of the crux of this discussion here. That she is assigned to help kill Godzilla, but she also is the only one who's kind of bonded with Godzilla, and then seeing a baby Godzilla, she's reminded, like, oh, they're animals, they are part of nature, they are kind of part of the ecosystem. Is it even ethical for us to wipe them out? Now, mind you, this film, it gets fluffy with it. It leans pretty quickly onto the idea that all these monsters are just victims, right? Rodan, Godzilla, oh, they're just part of nature. If the film really wanted to dig into it, and I think probably Terror Mechagodzilla does dig into this a little more, at least in a more stylish fashion, the thing Mechagodzilla 2 misses is a counter-argument. Why don't we have a field trip, folks, to the cemeteries of all the people who've been killed by Godzilla? A memorial, a shrine of some sort for all the people who have been injured or murdered by Godzilla. And isn't it nature? If humankind is part of nature, what animals in nature don't try to defend themselves, don't try to protect their young? How is it not part of nature that mankind wants to defend against a threat like Godzilla? And then the human consequence, all the sacrifice that has gone into letting this monster live. If the film really, I wish it had balanced this a little more, but at least it does challenge it for a few moments. This is a far cry from the end of Space Godzilla, where we're like, we need to stop polluting outer space, because that's been a major theme through this whole movie. Okay, our next category is, let's call it like robot women from Tokyo. So it's kind of funny and unique. Both of these films end up with the Mechagodzilla who is very much reliant on a female counterpart. And the female counterpart is, in both cases, kind of being forced to become a controller of Mechagodzilla, or at least part of the crew of Mechagodzilla, very much against her will. Which, with Katsura, is kind of... I always like to talk about, with Honda, the way he tries to find a human character who mirrors the monster character. I think with Terror Mechagodzilla, the obvious example is Katsura and Titanosaurus. They both are inherently peaceful, nice by nature, and because of the forces manipulating them, they are forced to be violent. Titanosaurus is forced into violence by Mifune's vengeance plot, vengeance spiel, and Katsura, because she owes her life, her cyborg life, to the aliens, is bound to them. And it's one of the main contributing factors. I was kind of talking about why I think people have a hard time really loving this. This is a dark Godzilla film, honestly. Katsura is the prime example, but even Mifune, as kind of silly, stereotypical as he is, he really also, you can't help but sympathize for him at the end. I mean, by the end, this is the classic, like, genius, his very idea of how to make the perfect fighting machine, and they do it on his daughter. It's almost like a small little Greek tragedy of some sort. It's pretty awful. But poor Katsura somehow is still split between knowing, like, some human feelings and feeling like guilt for all the victims and sympathy, and she feels bad that Titanosaurus is being turned into this violent creature when he's not. But yet she's also a robot, and they can click a button and make her do what they want. By the end, though, she does gain enough control. She knows, like, I am the controller for Mechagodzilla. If you kill me, we save the day. And this is one of the other interesting similarities between both of these girls. They both pull the trigger Pull the trigger. Katsura blows up her stomach and reveals all her terrible organs. And what's the detective Ichino say? He's like, I still love you, cyborg girl. Oh god, that is such a forced part of this script. Well, like the whole romance in like the course of what, maybe 2 weeks, if I'm being generous here. They've known each other how long? And it's like the dude falling in love with this girl who like doesn't put out any good or bad vibes. She just kind of stares at him like he's a total creep almost every scene they're together. And then we discover she's an alien, and oh my god, the editing is so terrible. The editing is so terrible in this film. Really, there is a middle portion of this movie that, in my mind, is just soup. After watching that American dub, it's just soup. Like, I don't know what they did to the continuity and the narrative of this film. It's wretched. Let's sally on, sally forth. Let's talk about Miki Sagusa. Right. So weirdly, I wish the film had explained a little more about what was this transition from her just being like a government advisor into being a member of G-Force. And not just like a member, like when they tell her she has to be on the crew, she's like, I don't want to do that. When they tell her they're using the baby Godzilla as bait, she's like, you can't do that. It's a living creature. It's not just a toy for the military. And they never listen to her, and they always force her to do what she wants to do. She even struggles with her goggles, like, I can't kill him. I can't blow up his brain. And the commander's on the other end is like, do it. And she's like, okay. And she blows up Godzilla's brain. Now, we could make the argument that's pretty terrible. Maybe even way too out of sync for the character in the arc of the Heisei period. I actually kind of like it. I think it broadens her character a little bit, that there's a part of Miki too that's like, I don't know if it's national pride or she really does want a solution to get rid of Godzilla. She just has a hard time admitting it. I don't know. I like that she does actually decide to blow up Godzilla's brain and play a key part in killing him. He's pretty dead for a few minutes of this movie. I mean, he's gray and pasty and he's just lying there until Rodan does the magical fairy dust storm of radiation. Okay, now mind you, I complained about that earlier, but the shot with Godzilla standing and the dust flying, and then they do like the little lens cap. What's that thing that J.J. Abrams is always doing with the light fixtures? You know what I'm talking about? It's a great shot. I love when Godzilla wakes up in this movie and Mechagodzilla like starts melting from the heat of it all. It's pretty cool. What were we talking about? So yeah, between these two characters, I'd say Miki, honestly, what they wanted to do with her was really smart. It was the right impulse. For the first time, she had a much more interesting critical role to play. Maybe even more so than Biollante, where she's introduced. But we needed to pad out just a little exposition of how this machine works, why it is her powers let her see Godzilla's brain and no one else. It would have just helped add some gravitas to it. As it is, what it stands to me is probably one of the smartest ideas in the whole Heisei period, and they gave it all of 15 minutes. It's frustrating. On the other side, I think Katsura, it depends on how patient you can be. Because initially, the first time watching the movie, you're probably thinking, this girl is a terrible actress. She's so wooden. This is all awkward and uncomfortable. And then as the story builds, it all makes sense, but it always stays kind of awkward and uncomfortable. It's just a really sad story, but it ends very satisfyingly. And she's arguably the best example of real character development that maybe the entire 70s Godzilla films demonstrate. You know, it took Ishiro Honda returning to get us back there. All right, kaiju fans, all good things must come to an end. As I said earlier, please find the Japanese version, especially for Terror of Mechagodzilla. Do yourself that favor. I'll close with the argument that actually Terror of Mechagodzilla is not such a terrible way for the Showa period to end. I know a lot of people feel kind I don't know if betrayed is the right word. Let's go with disappointed. And it's frustrating. The most frustrating thing is that they use the alternative Godzilla costume from like a movie and a half ago as his walking out into the ocean costume. Which is like, why? Fucking dumb. Anyway, one of the things I've always kind of respected about this movie as a send away for the King of the Monsters for 9 years was that it did a nice job of incorporating 60s Showa Godzilla. It incorporates some of the darker, harder science fiction, incorporates a lot of Ishiro Honda tropes. I mean, because Honda is involved for his last Godzilla film, but it also keeps some of the nature of the 70s. We have our space aliens, we have our flashy Mechagodzilla with all his bright laser cannons, and we have Godzilla in just kind of his decidedly heroic, show up when it's convenient mode. It I don't think it's as much of a tragedy as a lot of people tend to think. That it's abrupt and that's frustrating, I know. But actually I think it's a pretty nice send off in a lot of ways. That it's a film that encapsulates so many of the trends from the Showa period, and they all kind of boomerang back at you for the last film. Too bad it sucked it up at the box office. Am I right? And God, can we get Titanosaurus in another movie? Let's do that. Let's do that. Hey, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing or comments or anything. You guys rock, and I appreciate it. Anyway, whew, that was a lot of comparing and contrasting, right? Let's call it a night. I am signing off from Denver, Colorado. We are the Super Bowl champions of what, 2016, 2015? What, I don't even know how that season shit works. Fuck it. I don't know. I thought you said black was supposed to be slimming.